Hey everyone, welcome to another episode from Ampro Engineering. This is going to be another installment of the My Car series, and in this episode, I'm going to talk about a car that I really wouldn't have thought I was going to. What we have here is the leftovers of the restoration of my Tamiya Super Hornet, Rising Fighter, and one of my Hornets. When that restoration was complete, I looked in the waste bin and discovered that I had quite a number of parts in there. This chassis had been tossed because the whole front of it's ruined. This is from the Rising Fighter. There's a couple of cracks in these Super Hornet or perhaps Grasshopper 2 sliders. It's missing some screws because the holes are completely stripped out. The transmission was just a leftover from one of the Hornets. These rear mounts for the Super Hornet are in horrendous shape. The Super Hornet body is a catastrophe. You can see there's cracks all over it. It came painted and decaled this way, and I haven't a clue how many layers of paint. I've estimated between 5 and 7, but that could be off slightly. Let's pull the body off, and under the body we're going to notice a couple of things. Oops, that's coming out already. Yeah, even actually, is this? This is a failed print from the Super Hornet. In fact, I think it's warped. You can see how damaged the front of the chassis is. I think someone drove it without the bumper on it, which caused that. This front body mount is from a Grasshopper 2, so I 3D printed in resin this little adapter to push it up just slightly to fit the Super Hornet body. The speed control was about $4, and then immediately after purchase, it began to have all these weird issues with reverse. So instead of tossing it, we just threw it in here. The receiver, it had a shredded antenna, so I repaired the antenna on that. I think the servo is one of the few things that wasn't modified to get into this vehicle. The motor is ancient and it seems to be operational. It works pretty well. I got it out of a car that was very rusty, as you can tell by the surface oxidation. These springs are straight off of the Rising Fighter, so they're quite bouncy. Wheels and tires are from a Hornet, as you can tell, and they are in pretty bad shape. I don't think there's any, oh yeah, they're cracked. They're all pretty, oh wow. Yeah, they're all pretty cracked, but they've still got some meat to them, and I don't see any reason to get rid of them until I completely consume them. Rear tires are a bit on the bald side, but this is where I like Hornet tires. To me, they've got a little bit of grip there. What else do we have on this car? I believe oh yeah, here's the chassis is broken. I perhaps broke it during some of the additional videos that I did, so we'll just go ahead and epoxy that back together. Again, there are splits in the chassis right here at the shock tower, both front and rear. In fact, the front of this one's cracked as well. So what you can see here is, overall, it's just really kind of a pile of junk. And although many of these parts probably aren't good enough to even be squished together to form a car, the fact of the matter is they still do form a car. Not a good one, but they form a car. One of my friends, every time he comes over, this is the car that he wants to go drive when we walk down by the creek by the house. And he just thinks it's a ball to drive. And unlike many of my other cars, he has no concern about this one here. He knows he's not going to hurt it. I don't think it's possible to break this car because it's all broken. You can't break what's already broken. And that's the beauty of this vehicle. So if you've got a bunch of junk in a drawer, yeah, it could stay in your junk drawer, or you could turn it into something. And in the case of this car, we have turned it into pretty much a Super Hornet. I believe the front arms are the only things that weren't destroyed. They're a little bit on the warped side, but they are in good shape. And as my Rising Fighter and my Super Hornet do not have their factory arms, they've got the Ampro double wishbone units, I had no use for these. I do kind of like the overall look of the vehicle. Squish that back on there. I like the fact that it has this blue body with the matching blue shocks. Perhaps I like to try and peel these stickers off. I don't like the stickers, but I do like the color of the body. I think it looks pretty good. I mean, 99% of the Super Hornets are black out there, so it's a little bit nicer to see something a bit different. I know that there's a crack on the rear shock tower. This is the brace that goes from the chassis to the wing mount up here, and that does support the rear shocks. It's a fairly weak component, and this chassis was on a Rising Fighter, but as I recall, there's an additional brace for the Rising Fighter, but the Rising Fighter that I had didn't come with the Rising Fighter body. And that is historically a pretty weak spot, especially if you pull the hard plastic body and run something Lexan. These bodies are part of a complete unibody that the car really needs in order to stay in one piece. What else can I say about this car? It is fully operational-ish. Sometimes it has reverse. It doesn't have the Ampro trans brace, which I didn't realize it was missing, and that's pretty irritating because when the car is just sitting there at idle, the trans ends up sliding all the way up, which means when you push down on the rear wing, there's almost no suspension travel. Whereas on the Super Hornet with the brace, since the transmission can no longer slide all the way up or all the way down, it is now pivoting from the center. When you set the car down, you've got almost all of your suspension travel. So that's kind of nice. I don't know why I didn't install it. It's possible that I built this car before I designed that. It's been around quite a long time. Actually, good to have the Super Hornet out here because you can see that obviously this is predominantly a Super Hornet. Now this one here may be better in every single way. It looks better, the body's beautiful, the chassis is perfect, it's got the double wishbone for suspension, it's got all these really good electronics. But this one here on the right, though everything is trashed on it, to be honest, this one's probably more fun because although this car does get out quite often, it doesn't see dirt lots. This one here pretty much only sees dirt lots, mud puddles, and things that you would never do to a car like that. So there's something to be said about something like this one here when having absolutely no redeeming features of the vehicle is what makes it so fantastic. I get a lot of people telling me that they want to buy this really high-end car. It's going to have all these upgrades and all these amazing things. You know, sometimes you just don't need that. Sometimes you just need a little bit of garbage. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching. Again, this really wasn't a video that I was planning on making. It's actually been on the episode a few times, especially when I was reviewing the Rising Fighter, some of the upgrades, and the Super Hornet. So it's been on air a few times, but some of the more recent posts on Instagram brought up a lot of questions about what the car is. So I hope this answers all your questions. I hope you like it. I know I certainly have people that love it, and I gotta say, it is definitely fun to drive. Stay tuned, and we will see you next time.